A North Korean drone just breached South Korea's most restricted airspace and hovered directly over the presidential office complex in downtown Seoul. Not near it, over it. The facility that houses the president of South Korea, the National Security Council, and the most sensitive command infrastructure in the entire country was filmed from above by an unmanned aircraft that nobody stopped, nobody shot down, and according to multiple reports, nobody even detected until it was too late. 7 previous North Korean drone incursions this year alone, and this one penetrated the heart of South Korean sovereignty in broad daylight. Welcome to Legal Lens USA. This is David Reynolds, and what you are about to hear will fundamentally change how you understand the balance of military power on the Korean Peninsula and what it means for American forces stationed there right now. Before we go any further, if you are new here, hit that like button and subscribe right now because we cover stories like this before anyone else does, and we break them down in a way that actually makes sense. The date was March 23rd. The location was Yongsan, Central Seoul, one of the most heavily monitored and protected zones in all of South Korea. The presidential office relocated to this former military district specifically because of its defensibility, its layered security architecture, and its integration with South Korea's most advanced surveillance and response systems. This is not some remote border outpost where detection systems might have gaps. This is the symbolic and operational center of South Korean state power, located in a dense urban environment where every square meter of airspace is supposed to be tracked, analyzed, and defended. The facility sits surrounded by multiple overlapping radar systems, both military and civilian. Seoul itself maintains some of the most comprehensive air traffic monitoring infrastructure in the world, given its proximity to North Korea and the constant threat of aerial incursion. Commercial aircraft, military helicopters, even small private planes, everything that flies over Seoul is supposed to appear on multiple tracking systems simultaneously. And yet on this particular morning, a small unmanned aerial vehicle crossed into restricted airspace, maneuvered over the presidential complex, captured video footage of the facility from multiple angles, and departed without being engaged by any defensive system. The drone was not destroyed. It was not forced down. It simply completed its mission and left. According to South Korean military officials speaking to local media outlets, the intrusion lasted several minutes of unauthorized flight over the most protected real estate in the country. The footage captured by the drone, which North Korean state media later broadcast, showed clear aerial views of the main administrative building, surrounding security perimeters, and vehicle access points. The level of detail visible in the released imagery demonstrated that the drone had flown low enough and remained overhead long enough to gather operationally significant intelligence. South Korean defense officials confirmed the incident occurred, but initially characterized it as a small commercial-type drone, attempting to minimize the significance by suggesting it was a low-capability system rather than a sophisticated military platform. However, independent analysis of the broadcast footage and flight characteristics suggested something more capable than a simple hobbyist quadcopter. The drone demonstrated controlled flight in what would have been challenging wind conditions at altitude in an urban environment. It maintained stable hover positioning for video capture. It navigated precisely to its target and departed along what appeared to be a pre-planned route. These characteristics indicate a system with GPS navigation, autonomous flight capability, and mission programming well beyond consumer-grade equipment. The drone's origin point remains disputed. North Korean media claimed it launched from inside the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and successfully penetrated South Korean airspace and defenses to reach Seoul. South Korean officials suggested it may have launched from a location closer to Seoul, possibly even from within South Korean territory by operatives who had infiltrated earlier. Both scenarios present serious security failures. If the drone launched from North Korean territory, it means South Korea's border detection systems, its layered air defense network, and its surveillance infrastructure all failed to identify and track a slow-moving aerial target traversing dozens of kilometers to reach the capital. If it launched from within South Korean territory, it means North Korean operatives successfully infiltrated, established operational capability, and executed a reconnaissance mission without detection by counterintelligence services. What makes this drone, and dozens like it that North Korea has been deploying, fundamentally different from the aerial threats that air defense systems were designed to counter? The answer lies in understanding what modern integrated air defense networks are optimized to detect and destroy versus what small unmanned systems actually present as targets. Traditional air defense architecture evolved to counter manned aircraft, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. These targets share certain characteristics. They are large enough to generate clear radar returns. They fly at speeds and altitudes that create distinct signatures. They emit heat from engines that infrared systems can track. They follow flight profiles that fit within expected parameters for hostile aircraft or incoming missiles. A small drone, particularly one flying at low altitude using electric propulsion, presents an entirely different challenge. The radar cross-section, the physical size as it appears to radar, can be smaller than a bird. Standard air defense radars filter out small returns to avoid being overwhelmed by clutter from birds, insects, weather phenomena, and ground reflection. If a drone's radar signature falls below the filtering threshold, it simply does not appear on the display. Even when detected, distinguishing a small drone from a bird or other non-threatening object requires human analysis that may not happen fast enough. Electric propulsion produces minimal heat signature compared to jet engines or rocket motors, making infrared detection unreliable. Flight altitude below 500 meters keeps the drone beneath the optimal detection range of many long-range radar systems designed to look up at medium and high-altitude threats, not down at ground level. The flight speed presents another complication. Modern interceptor missiles and anti-aircraft guns are optimized for fast-moving targets. A cruise missile traveling at 800 kilometers per hour or a fighter jet at supersonic speeds present interception challenges based on reaction time and projectile flight time, but the physics of engagement are well understood. A drone flying at 60 kilometers per hour, slower than many cars on a highway, creates the opposite problem. Interceptor missiles may actually struggle to fly slow enough to maintain maneuverability at the drone's speed. The missile's own minimum sustainable velocity may exceed the drone's maximum speed, making kinetic interception extremely difficult. Even direct-fire systems like anti-aircraft cannons face challenges engaging such slow, small, low-altitude targets. The engagement geometry requires precise ranging and lead calculation for a target that may be barely visible to optical sights. North Korea has reportedly developed multiple drone variants for different mission profiles. Some models appear optimized for reconnaissance with camera packages and extended flight duration. Others may carry small explosive payloads designed for kamikaze-style attacks on specific targets. The reconnaissance variants likely employ commercial-grade cameras, GPS receivers, and flight control systems that are widely available through civilian supply chains. The kamikaze variants would add a payload bay and likely a simplified fusing system. None of this requires cutting-edge technology. Everything necessary to build a militarily effective small drone can be purchased openly or manufactured with modest technical infrastructure. The critical insight is not that North Korea has developed some exotic technology. The insight is that they have recognized the vulnerability gap in South Korean defenses and built systems specifically designed to exploit it. According to reports from South Korean government sources and statements from military officials speaking to Yonhap News Agency and other outlets, this was the 7th confirmed North Korean drone incursion in the past year. 7 times that detection systems identified aerial vehicles that had already penetrated defended airspace. Each incident followed a similar pattern. Detection came late, if at all. Response was ineffective or absent. The drone completed its mission and either returned to North Korean territory or crashed after exhausting its fuel or battery. In one previous incident in December, 5 North Korean drones crossed the border simultaneously and flew over multiple South Korean cities, including areas near Seoul, for several hours before South Korean forces managed to force down one drone and lost track of the others. South Korea scrambled fighter jets and helicopters in response to that incursion. Despite this overwhelming display of air power, not a single drone was shot down by aircraft. One drone crashed after South Korean forces pursued it for hours, likely due to battery exhaustion rather than successful engagement. The evidence of South Korea's struggle with this threat comes not only from North Korean claims, but from South Korean admissions and Western analysis. The South Korean military acknowledged publicly that its current systems are poorly configured to counter small drone threats. The Ministry of National Defense announced plans to acquire anti-drone systems, including jammers and detection equipment specifically designed for small unmanned aerial vehicles. This acknowledgement came after the December incidents created public outcry over the apparent ease with which North Korean drones operated in South Korean airspace. But procurement timelines for new systems extend over years, and integration with existing defenses requires extensive testing and training. In the meantime, the vulnerability remains. Western defense analysts commenting on the incidents noted that South Korea faces the same challenge confronting militaries worldwide. The proliferation of cheap, accessible drone technology has outpaced defensive system development. Dr. Jeffrey Lewis, a non-proliferation expert at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, stated in an analysis published following previous North Korean drone incidents that these small systems demonstrate the fundamental challenge of asymmetric threats. North Korea can manufacture or acquire dozens or hundreds of simple drones for the cost of a single advanced interceptor missile. South Korea cannot afford to fire expensive missiles at every small aerial contact, both because of cost and because missile inventories are finite. This creates a strategic mismatch, where the attacker holds initiative and the defender struggles to establish effective counters. The validation from South Korea's own defense establishment and from Western analysts makes clear that this is not North Korean propaganda exaggerating minor incidents. The problem is real, acknowledged across multiple sources with different institutional interests. When South Korean military officials publicly announce procurement programs specifically to address drone threats, they are confirming that existing capabilities have failed to provide adequate defense. When Western defense experts describe the incidents as demonstrating fundamental asymmetries, they are acknowledging that this is not a temporary gap that quick fixes can resolve. What does this mean strategically? This is where the story goes from concerning to genuinely alarming for anyone thinking about military stability on the Korean Peninsula. The entire foundation of South Korea's defense posture rests on layered detection and response capabilities that can identify threats early and neutralize them before they reach critical targets. Command centers, air bases, logistics hubs, communication nodes, all of these facilities are supposed to be protected by overlapping defensive systems that ensure nothing hostile can approach without being detected and engaged. The drone incidents demonstrate that this assumption no longer holds for an entire category of threats. North Korea now possesses confirmed capability to conduct reconnaissance over any target in South Korea using systems that current defenses cannot reliably counter. The intelligence value of this capability is substantial. Detailed aerial imagery of military facilities provides targeting data for artillery, missiles, and future strikes. Imagery of defensive positions and force deployments informs operational planning. Continuous reconnaissance creates an intelligence picture that allows North Korean planners to track changes in South Korean and American force posture. But the implications extend beyond reconnaissance. If reconnaissance drones can penetrate defenses and loiter over targets, then armed drones can do the same. A small drone carrying even a modest explosive payload could strike command centers, radar installations, parked aircraft, fuel storage, ammunition depots, and other high-value targets that are vulnerable to precision attack. The presidential office complex that was just overflown represents one of the highest value targets in the entire country. The fact that a drone could approach, capture detailed imagery, and depart without interdiction means that facility is now confirmed vulnerable to attack by similar systems. This creates immediate operational consequences. Security protocols around the facility will require revision. Air defense systems will need reconfiguration. New detection and response capabilities will need deployment. All of this requires time, resources, and disruption to normal operations. Even more significant are the implications for crisis stability. In a scenario where military tensions escalate rapidly, North Korea now knows it can conduct reconnaissance and potentially strikes against critical South Korean targets using systems that cannot be reliably stopped. This creates incentives for preemptive action if North Korean leadership believes conflict is imminent. If they assess that South Korea and the United States are preparing strikes, the ability to hit critical targets with difficult-to-intercept systems becomes an attractive option for degrading enemy capabilities before those strikes occur. The challenge extends to American forces stationed in South Korea. United States military installations around Seoul, air bases, logistics facilities, and command centers all become vulnerable to the same drone threat that just penetrated South Korean presidential security. American troops operating in these facilities now face a confirmed threat vector that existing defensive systems struggle to counter. The broader implication touches on missile defense and strategic stability across the region. If South Korea cannot reliably defend against slow, simple drones, what does that mean for its ability to defend against North Korea's expanding arsenal of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and other systems? The layered defense architecture that is supposed to protect against these threats relies on detection, tracking, and engagement capabilities that have just been demonstrated inadequate against a much simpler challenge. Implementing comprehensive anti-drone defenses across all critical facilities in South Korea would require deploying entirely new categories of systems. Electronic warfare equipment to jam drone control signals and GPS navigation. Acoustic sensors and specialized radars designed to detect small aerial targets. directed energy weapons, potentially including lasers that can engage drones at close range, net-based capture systems. All of this technology exists but has not been deployed at scale. Integration with existing air defense networks requires extensive development. Training personnel to operate new systems takes time. The cost of comprehensive deployment across dozens of critical sites would run into billions of dollars. And even with all of that investment, the fundamental asymmetry remains. North Korea can produce simple drones far faster and cheaper than South Korea can deploy sophisticated countermeasures. This is what the March incident has revealed. Not just a single security failure, but a systemic vulnerability in South Korea's defense architecture that extends from the presidential office to every military facility in the country. And there is no quick fix. There is no simple procurement decision that resolves this overnight. The entire defensive paradigm requires rethinking to account for threats that existing systems were never designed to counter. Now, South Korean government statements and military officials have attempted to frame these incidents as minor intrusions that pose limited actual threat, despite the obvious intelligence and propaganda value to North Korea. Defense Ministry spokespeople emphasize that the drones are small systems with limited payload capacity and that heightened security measures are in place around critical facilities. Some statements suggested the drones may have been commercially available models rather than sophisticated military systems, presumably attempting to minimize the impression of North Korean technical capability. United States Forces Korea issued statements noting that American installations maintain robust security protocols and that the drone incidents are being monitored but do not change the overall threat assessment. The conflicting narratives, North Korea claiming successful penetration of South Korea's most defended airspace, and South Korean officials characterizing the incidents as manageable security concerns, create an atmosphere where factual assessment becomes challenging. However, several objective indicators cut through the competing messaging. First, South Korea launched emergency procurement programs for anti-drone systems immediately following the December incidents. This procurement activity, publicly announced and funded through supplemental defense budgets, demonstrates official recognition that existing capabilities are inadequate. Governments do not rush emergency spending on new defensive systems to counter threats they consider minor or manageable with existing resources. Second, the South Korean Air Force grounded civilian drone operations in large areas around military facilities and implemented restricted flight zones with significantly expanded parameters. These operational changes impose real costs on civilian drone operators, commercial aerial photography, and recreational use. Such restrictions would not be implemented if officials believed the threat was limited. Third, South Korean military officials publicly acknowledged to domestic media that current systems failed to detect or engage the drones effectively. These admissions came in the context of explaining why new capabilities are necessary, but they confirmed that the existing defensive posture proved inadequate, regardless of how officials choose to characterize the significance. For many observers, the fact that North Korean drones repeatedly penetrated defended airspace and conducted reconnaissance over critical facilities represents a dangerous erosion of South Korea's security, regardless of whether those specific missions resulted in immediate damage. The precedent is established. The vulnerability is confirmed. The intelligence has been gathered. Whether officials choose to characterize this as a major breach or a manageable incident does not change the operational reality that defenses designed to protect critical sites failed to prevent unauthorized aerial surveillance. So where does this leave the security situation on the Korean Peninsula? It leaves it at a moment where one of the foundational assumptions about military balance, that South Korea's technical and financial advantages translate into reliable defensive superiority, has been directly challenged by a threat that costs almost nothing to deploy and has proven extremely difficult to counter. A presidential office complex that houses the most senior leadership in the country was overflown and photographed by an unmanned aircraft that current defenses could not stop. Multiple previous incidents demonstrated the same vulnerability across different facilities and different regions. South Korea's own military has acknowledged the problem and announced procurement programs that will take years to implement and cost billions to deploy comprehensively. This is a story that is still developing, and Legal Lens USA will keep you updated as new information emerges. If this video helped you understand what is really happening with North Korean drone operations and what it means for security on the Korean Peninsula, please share it with someone who needs to see it and drop a comment below. Do you think South Korea and the United States have a credible answer to this drone threat right now, or will this vulnerability persist for years while defensive systems struggle to catch up? Let us know what you think, because this conversation matters and your perspective matters. This is what one successful drone overflight of Seoul's presidential district has revealed. Every military planner, every defense official, every security analyst watching the Korean peninsula is now absorbing what that means. The solutions are not simple. The timeline is not short. But the vulnerability has been demonstrated clearly in an incursion that nobody stopped over the most defended facility in the entire country.